Kendra, how are we doing for a quorum this morning?
We have, the only one missing at this time, I believe, is Richard Gums, who said maybe, he's gonna attend in person, but, maybe a few minutes late.
All right, thank you.
Oh, and Jeff Johnson is also absent.
Okay, thank you. All right, being that it is 9 a.m., Thursday, June 3rd, 2021, I'm going to go ahead and call the Marathon County Infrastructure Committee meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Do we have anybody signed up for public comment?
Yes, we have, Joe Punchuk, called me earlier today, and I don't know if, I see somebody that is called in with a 920 ending in 49. I don't know if that is Joe or somebody else. And, I believe,
Yep, that's me.
all right, and then we also have, Judy, would like to talk?
Yes.
We also have, another person in person here, so.
All right, well, let's start with the folks that are joining us virtually. If you could state your name, address, and we'll keep the public comments per the agenda to no longer, well, that doesn't say that. Excuse me. Just if you can provide your name and address for public comment, please.
Sure. My name is Joel Ponchak. I live at 201131 Hidden Cove Lane in Mosinee, 54455.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Sure. So I was told that you guys were going to be discussing the potential for opening county roads for ATV and UTV traffic. So I live just south of Knowlton off of County Highway DB. All the other town roads are open, you know, and the only problem is I can't really go anywhere except for my specific neighborhood without throwing my rig on a trailer. You know, Portage County is open. It's only a mile down the road. You know, I got to throw it on a trailer just to get there. So I would just like to see some movement on opening county roads, or the possibility of opening county roads to ATV and UTV traffic in the future.
All right, thank you. Do we have anybody else virtually that's joining us that would like to provide public comment? If not, let's go to the actual meeting room for public comment. If you could come up to the microphone, like I said, please provide your name and address.
Morning, everybody. I'm Judy Pagrazinski, 226690 Blue Jay Lane in Ringgold. I am the president of the Rural Riders ATV UTV Club, so my comment is basically the same as the other person's was. I'd just like to go over some numbers that I have. The average number of riders that we have on the roads at any given time is about 3 or 4. I mean, we're not being bombarded by ATV UTV use. Our organized rides sometimes are 15 and 20 riders, a lot of times 10 to 12. Current procedure that we have right now is to pay $100 per application for every section of road that we would like approved. That's for county roads. And then we have to pay for the signage as well. As of to date, we have approximately, our club alone paid about, I don't know, somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000. Eldron probably got about $1,300. Shantytown's roughly around $2,000. Hewitt, a gentleman up there, paid probably about $700 to get sections of county roads open. Technically, this really doesn't affect me a whole lot because I don't ride my UTV a lot. We ride motorcycle and a lot of other stuff, so there's not enough days in the week to get everything accomplished. But because of the area that we have, all the townships in our eastern section, except for I think it's maybe Harrison, way up on the northeast corner, have all their roads open for ATV, UTV use. I think that it's time to kind of maybe lessen the application process or change the process completely. Give us a trial period. I think we've shown in the past couple years, I've been president for over 3 years, and we haven't had any major incidences. I mean, you're always gonna have some idiot out there that's gonna attempt something, just like you have on motorcycles, cars, trucks, bicycles, horse and buggy. I mean, there's always gonna be an accident. We can't prevent it 100%. By allowing us to be more public, more knowledgeable, I can promote more safety with my club meetings. I can go to other clubs and have been going to other club meetings to promote safety. So being that other counties are open and don't have a whole lot of problems, I think it's time that Marathon County step up. I mean, we're gonna provide a lot of commerce to the area if we can get around better. So that's about all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have anybody else that's in the meeting and wishing to provide public comment?
No, the rest is staff or committee.
All right, thank you, sir. We'll move on to item 3 on the agenda, approval of the minutes of the May 6, 2021 Marathon County meeting, infrastructure meeting. What is your pleasure?
Motion to approve by Christensen.
Second, Johnson.
We have a motion by Christensen and a second by Johnson. Any further comments, discussion?
Chair.
Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Hold on 1 second, Chair. Supervisor Robinson has a comment.
Go ahead, Supervisor Robinson.
In the discussion on the safety measures, we did not, the minutes do not reflect that either the amendment or the motion carried. So we would need to, I would move to amend the minutes to reflect that both of the motions under policy issues discussion on the potential approval of the safety plan reflect that the motion is carried.
All right. Do the folks that made the motion and second, do you agree with the amendment?
Yes.
Christensen and Johnson are okay?
Yes.
All right. Anything further? Hearing none. All those in favor with the amendment to the minutes of the May 6, 2021 Infrastructure Committee meeting signify by saying aye.
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 And those opposed? All right, motion passes. Minutes are approved. We're on to item 4, policy issues discussion, potential committee determinations for a Marathon County Highway
Chair.
Department's 2022. Yep.
Chair Farver, we have quite a few members here regarding, I sent you an email yesterday. We have quite a few staff members here. I was wondering if we could possibly go down to item 5A regarding the use of ATV ordinance. We have, like I said, quite a few staff members here. If we could jump down to that one first.
Apologies. Yeah. Is the committee okay with moving item 5A up? Does anybody have an issue with that? All right, hearing now, we'll move on. We'll move item 5A, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, resolution, or policy, use of ATV, UTV on county highway system. Commissioner Griesbach, go ahead.
Today we have a few different items all on the same topic. It's been brought to us by the Sheriff's Department and the Parks and Recs. Our existing ordinance seems to have some confusion between trails and routes. The first thing they like to do is to take a look at that ordinance and clean up some of the language in it. A few of the items that we have confusion on is the difference between a trail and a route. So we're talking about when this ordinance was created, we had said that we did not want to have people without driver's license, 16 years old, operating ATVs. But that was more for the routes, and Mitch is here today. He can probably explain a little better than I. But we also have some trails here in Marathon County, you know, specifically the Edgar Fenwood Trail, and then we also have the Burma Trail. And there's some confusion for ATV people if they need to have the driver's license 16 age requirement on those. And also with that, there's some speed issues. We have a difference between the speed on the trails and routes, so we'd like to also clean that up. And we did send you some additions to the existing ordinance. Could you just scroll down to the blue part? They are kind of color coded, and we're sharing the screen right now. We're gonna go down to the areas that we are talking about. There is the operating requirements for the trails. That blue is a new segment we'd like to add in there for the folks using the trails. And then if we scroll down a little bit farther, Kendra, in the green section, there's some difference with the speed limits. And Mitch, could you just clarify to make sure that everything I got going here is correct? Mitch is the Marathon County ATV motorized recreation coordinator. So are those all the topics we needed on that ordinance?
Yeah, for the park side of it, I'm sorry, we're, oh, there.
Hold down the mute button.
No.
Green light. Green light's good, green light's good. Can you hear me now?
There you
Oh, there we go, okay.
You gotta keep it pretty close to your mouth.
All right. What was that? Oh. Yeah. So from the Parks Department side, we were taking a look at this, as we had mentioned the difference between route and the trail, the age limit. Currently, state statutes allow for under 16, 12 to 16 years of age to obtain a ATV rider safety course certification, and that's what they can use to ride on a trail versus the route. Obviously, the route, we have the same requirement for having a driver's license, which we're okay with. The ordinance we were reading was a little confusing unless you were really looking at it to nitpick, just to differentiate the fact that if Marathon County did allow those youth riders on the trails, currently our ordinance does not clearly state that that's okay. Right now, reading that, it is stating that you need to have a driver's license, you need to have it registered, and you as the operator need to have it insured, which...
Scroll up on the document a little bit. That was the section he's talking about.
Oh, I believe it was the one in blue. Yeah. Yep. So looking at this, everything that's highlighted in blue is what we had just added as a reference for what we would like to see added here. Really, the only difference is, like I mentioned there, number 2 or subsection 2, any operator between the ages of 12 and 15 years of age must have a valid ATV safety certificate to operate an ATV on designated ATV, UTV trail systems. The rest of that, as we addressed the legal portion of it, kind of focused on the legal owner of that ATV or UTV to have it registered, and the insurance. Obviously, we're not going to require a 12-year-old to go obtain insurance on a UTV. So those were the differences. Essentially, it is, like I said, the same version of what's on there now for the route requirements. So we didn't look to change any of that. And then the rules of operation listed in yellow is where we are at now with our ordinance. And then what was highlighted in green was what we were talking about with some of the speed limits and things that we were looking to address on that side of it.
Thank you. So that is our first issue today with the ATV, UTV. And I think, Chair, if you don't mind, I'll just go through all the issues and we can discuss where we want to go at the end of that.
Yeah, that works for me.
The next issue I had down was, and Judy kind of explained it already, is our existing policy. Our existing policy, how we are operating right now for ATV, UTVs. And again, it is that clubs or townships can apply to the Marathon County for a $100 fee plus the cost of the signage to put up the signs. to open up short segments to, basically for connectivity. Let's go to the map. For connectivity, just for if their trails don't line up, and basically if their town roads don't line up, if there's a river. The map that you see now, the lines in the purple are existing trails. There's probably about 20 sections of trails open right now in Marathon County, routes open in Marathon County that the people have liked through the process. There has been some conversation about opening up more roads, and that's where we are today that we'd like to talk about is just not cleaning up the existing ordinance, but what we'd like to maybe see in the future for a policy, which we could bring back at another time. So what we want today is discuss is what would the committee like to see, if any, change? I know there has been conversation about Portage County has just opened up their trails, their roads this past January. Really hasn't given us enough time yet to really evaluate what Portage County's doing. The main, I think, ATV operations are probably just getting rolling good here in the last month. I know there are some people out there in the winter, but right now people are just starting to roll with the ATVs. Portage County, again, has opened up all the roads. Our neighboring counties, Taylor, Lincoln, also have their roads open. I feel, however, that our roads are somewhat different here in Marathon County. We have, CAFO farms, some other large farms. We have many pits. Our traffic volumes are a lot higher here in Marathon County. So just for a reference, what we did today is prepared some other maps for you showing if we would open up roads that would have just 500 cars or less a day on. The map on the TV right now, displays, would show what that system would look like. We know there are some little situations in there where it may show 3 miles of a road with 400 cars, and for some reason the WISDOT site all of a sudden will show a half a mile with 750. There's some sections like that we want to clean up to make it uniform. But if we would open up the road system to 500 cars a day or less, that's what the system would look like. We also prepared a map if you would open up the roads for 750 or less, what that would look like. Again, the roads in the purple are the traffic volumes below 750. The next map would show if we'd open up for 1,000, anything under 1,000. And then we also have one more map showing that anything under 1,250. One thing I want to remind people is if we do open up anything else, there definitely is a cost to this. Right now, a 4x4, if anybody's doing any home construction, you're going to go buy a 4x4, you're going to see what the cost of materials are. We're figuring right now if we put up one sign, just the post, the marker, and the rope sign below it is right around $92 per sign. That's without the person going out there and marking down for Digger's Hotline what we need to do prior to and the installation. So if you open up, I'll just say for example, if you open up one route that's 3 miles long, that's 4 signs. You need to have a sign beginning and for both directions, northbound, southbound, or west, whatever they may be. So you're gonna need at least 4 signs. Just ballpark numbers. We're talking anywhere from 20,000, depending on what system you would consider to open up, anywhere from $20,000 to $45,000 to place these signs. According to state statute 23.33, we do need to sign any road that's open. There are townships that are posting that they can post that says all the roads in the town of Ringgold are open unless otherwise posted. I mean, if you end up having more roads that way, you can look at doing something like that. But there is a definite cost to this also. I just want the committee to be aware of the cost for those signs. Then again, with the signage, we have Ted Kinnick and Chad Billup in the room from the Sheriff's Department. Yeah, I'd like to also talk to them, these gentlemen, of what they've been seeing and the sheriff's input on this. And also if we would do some type of signage, how confusing is it out there right now with the signage, and what issues have you been seeing? So
Come up there, or do you want me to do it off here?
I think maybe up here be best, Ted.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Ted Kneck. I'm a lieutenant with the Sheriff's Office, currently assigned to, I've got lots of hats, and it's kind of ironic that I'm the Highway Safety Coordinator assigned by the Sheriff for the Sheriff's Office, and then I'm also in charge of all the DNR programs with the Sheriff's Office, and I work with the Parks Department. Our rec deputies work closely with them and so on. So since this all started, I have a really good background on it. I will come out by saying that I've learned in this position to go off of statistics, and I think there's great data out there, and I think the DOT has done a wonderful job over the last few years, and it's statistical data, especially with crashes. However, I don't mean this in a bad way, but I think with what's going on, there's a lot of things that have gone progressively fast, and now the DNR is trying to catch up. So the DNR and the DOT don't play well together, especially when it comes to crash-related data. And I think that data is very important. I will stress upon all of you to get onto our webpage, onto our website, and about 3/4 of the way down, there's a icon for community maps, and you can look up statistical data for crashes. It's right there. You can plug those things in, and year by year, every agency, law enforcement agency in the state of Wisconsin is logging crashes. And that's where I get a lot of my data from. Since the beginning of the ordinances in Marathon County where we've allowed township operation, I've noticed that there's things that progressively go really fast with this instead of, let's take a look at the data and things that are going on with it. I think right now, we currently have a good process that's going on, that we look at each road and we look at it as if opening up sections of roads, and we use data for that in a traffic recorder. I know in several occasions, Jim will contact me and we will put a recorder out, or he'll do the same. We'll evaluate that roadway, we'll look at it, either drive it or look on Google Maps to make sure that there's not any issues. He's reviewing it, I'm reviewing it, the Parks Department's reviewing it, and then we're ultimately deciding whether or not we approve and disapprove. And I think, Jim, if I'm incorrect, I think one that's come across me so far, I think there's only one that we haven't approved. One on our end. And two? Okay, and then Z. So we've done a pretty good job of opening up roadways. We're open to doing that. And the thing that I urge you is, again, on statistics. And we can compare counties, surrounding counties that have done things. We can compare counties that are up north. However, I'm going to give you some statistics right now. Marathon County in 2020 had 2,400 total crashes. Oneida, 810. Vilas, 469. Lincoln County, 664. Portage County, 1,182. Price County, 190. Forest County, 174. Now, if we go through that same data and we go to injury crashes, Marathon County's at 512. Oneida, 204. Vilas, 114. Lincoln, 149. Portage, 307. So on. I think you kind of get where I'm coming from. Statistics say that our metro area, especially, if you look at the surrounding Wausau, Rib Mountain, Weston, Mosinee, Kronewetter, so on, that is a big area. And in Marathon County, it's not just people living in those areas, it's people that live outside in the rural areas that are coming into the metro area. And that's what makes Marathon County unique, especially when you start talking about traffic totals and so on. I urge you that in this information that we provide to you, that I know that the sheriff and the chief, I've spoke to them. I know the ordinance is very important. I think it's important that if you look at a 16-year-old to operate on a roadway, on a motor vehicle, they have to have driver's ed. And I think that's one of the good things about the ordinance that currently has, is that you have to have that. The other issue we have is if you want to look at statistics and crashes, if you want to look at why some of the injuries related crashes have decreased, the fatals have decreased, because obviously there's a lot more statistics in roadway widths. There's a lot of engineering things that go into this. There's a lot of engineering going into vehicle safety as far as what's inside of vehicles, the airbags, side airbags, so on. That has decreased as well. Now we're going to take a motor vehicle and we're going to put it on a roadway that has none of those. And if we look at a ATV or UTV, we're looking at vehicles that do not have, besides a seatbelt on the UTVs, that don't have that protection. And now if we're operating on a roadway at 35 miles an hour or less, or now it's impacted by a motor vehicle, I don't think that takes much explanation to find out what's going to happen. We already have that issue with motorcycles periodically. If you look at motor vehicle injuries, as far as crashes, they're on the upper level percentage-wise. And that's the concern. Also ATVs, some of them are enclosed, so they're not required to have turn signals and other safety features which motor vehicles have. So when these ATVs or UTVs are enclosed, there's several circumstances where we're not getting hand signals, we don't have turn signals, and the increase or probability of the crashes are going to get higher. Again, I will go back to what Jim stated. I think we have done a wonderful job at trying to approve roads. If there has to be some type of a different procedure as far as trying to approve these, I think the process we have is working really well, because we are not, I guess, jumping in, head first and just running on at miles an hour. We've been doing a systematic thing on this, making sure that we don't get ahead of ourselves. Like when this originally happened, we did. I think we've done a wonderful job in the map that Jim showed that we have up, that's provided for people that they can see on there. And I think we've done a pretty good job here without getting too carried away. So I guess the recommendation of the sheriff and the chief when speaking to them is that we keep status quo and do not open up the county roads, open up sections as we go. And at another time in the future, we can reevaluate and see how that is going. I think so far it's going pretty good. I mean, we unfortunately, we do not have stats yet at this time, because the state and the DOT and the DNR do not jive in statistical data right now. And that's a little bit of a struggle. And it's something that we're working towards. I attend quarterly meetings with DOT, with engineers, with Jim, with so on, and we talk about these things almost every month. So it is a big push to have that happen. But again, I want to go back to the statistical data. I have it here. And again, data does not lie. We cannot compare ourselves to other counties. Everybody can say that they have just as much traffic as we do during the summer. However, we have it year-long, and we still have people traveling through these areas, and that's where that information's at. And that's why I wanted to give you the community map thing. I think I pretty much covered everything, unless somebody's got a question. Chief, I think I'm pretty good. Yes, sir.
Yes, it's got to be confusing for the deputies out there when you see ATVs out on the county trail to know what's open and what isn't open, especially on these more rural county roads. I understand, like, you get the highway ends, there's major east-west, there's a lot of traffic on there. But, some of those other north-south roads, it's got to be confusing for the deputies. I was just wondering, you got any comment on that, or?
Well, yeah, I mean, it really was confusing when we first started. And we were going into an area that we've never been before. So luckily, because of technology, we've been able to do a lot of different things. The one thing when this first started, we weren't notified by some of the townships that they opened up roads for ordinance, which they're required by law to do. So now we reached out to those townships and said, hey, just a reminder, you got to make sure you send us your ordinance because it's part of the state law. Mm-hmm. So now when we did that, what we did is we created a folder for those townships, okay? So then the folder started. Then it turned into we had more townships that adopted ordinances, where we then ended up contacting a Marathon County agency to help us create a map. And now all the roads are basically, as they are updated, even the routes that are put on county highways are put on that map. And everybody has access to that. When we pull up our computer system in our squad, we are basically able to pull that up and be able to determine whether or not that section of road is open for ATV or UTV. It's basically a layer in the map. I don't know if that makes sense. There's a little click button we can hit on there for ATV, UTV, and it'll show on our maps if we want it. We can go into another folder and look at the ordinance. And we have to, because sometimes there's some townships that adopted our Marathon County ordinance, and there's some that haven't. So we have a color-coded map that has ones that have our ordinance or not our ordinance. And it's very confusing, but we've also been very fortunate enough to have these two rec deputies that have assisted us through this process. And I think that has helped the department as well, because this is so evolving with not just the parks, but also on the DNR aspect of things, because things are, they're with the ATV, UTV thing has grown to be a big thing. We get, it's not a huge issue as far as complaints, but it is something that involves time. And by having those two gentlemen work that, it's helped out immensely. So I hope that answered your question.
No, it does. Do you have many citations that you put out? Do you know?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I could give you, if you guys want to see what we've done in a year, I think our rec deputies have done a phenomenal job of more teaching through warnings.
Okay.
And so on, because it's something that's new, and especially with ordinances, because if you go from one township to the next, some are signed really good, some aren't. Sometimes, and that's just the way it is. And I think as we've progressed with this, everybody's gotten better. So if somebody goes from one township to the next and there's not a sign there that says that you can't operate on their township road, okay, well, you can't. Here's a warning. Don't do it again. Here's where you got to go to look. And they've done a great job with that. So they've I'll bet you they're on a probably 80%, 85% of their paperwork that they've issued has been warnings. And again, I'm sorry, I'm a statistical person, I've said, but I'm shooting from the hip. But I review those documents, and I know what they do. And I think they've done a really good job with the enforcement side of things as a learning type of thing. And obviously, unfortunately, we have things happen where people do receive citations. But yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Yeah.
What do you call it, ag use or farm use? What do you call that permit? That
Yeah, it's ag or farm use, yes.
does that allow them to go anywhere in the county
Yes,
on any road?
on any road. Okay. Anyone else? All right, thank you very much.
Supervisor Dickinson. Oh,
Yes.
Supervisor Dickinson, if you could say, I'm going to share my video so you can see me. Hello.
Hello?
So you're talking about data. How many of the 2,400 accidents are in the Wausau area, in the highly populated area?
I can get that data for you. Right now, I don't have the computer in front of me, but in a little bit, I can get on there and I can let you know.
Sure. You know, because I'm looking at it, and I do, myself. Thanks for giving the reference to it. I mean, it's a significant number that are in those populated areas. And it would seem to me that maybe the ATV, UTV folks are more rural. So when we do look at the data, I think it's important to distinguish between those two areas, the urban area and the rural area. Because I don't know if there's anyone really coming from the Wausau area saying they want to drive around in the city of Wausau or Weston or something like that in those higher roads with ATVs. You did mention about ATV, about accidents. Are there any ATV or UTV data out there, accident data that we have?
No, right now there's very little, and that's some of the frustration on our end, because it would be really, if you look at that community maps, this website that you're on, it'd be really neat if they had a box there that you could check to see if you could, differentiate between, because there's a lot of different data there. There's like, for example, speed, seatbelt use, alcohol, things like that. If there was a box there that you'd be able to just click and it would be able to have ATV, UTV, or even if it was any DNR vehicle or, snowmobile, just to differentiate between those would be huge. But right now, that is not an option, unfortunately.
So you mentioned having the data jive, right? When, looking at that, do you have any idea when we can get this data to jive? So if we didn't do this now, when do you think would be a time to review this in the future?
Well,
is that a year, that 2 years, just trying to get a framework around that.
I do not have, I don't have that crystal ball to be able to tell what the DNR and the DOT, when they decide to get together. I know that after attending these meetings, it is something that's spoken to quite a bit. When you look at the crash data that is on that community maps, that was something statewide to get all agencies on board, and that took about a year for people to do that. If this starts becoming an issue, which it is, especially with injury and fatal crashes, that data is going to be pushed to be done when it's an issue. And statewide, they are dealing with more injury and fatal crashes when you're dealing with ATV and UTV use. That information is provided me through the Wisconsin DNR. Do I have stats on that? No, I do not. But it is my hope, because I believe that when it becomes an issue, that things tend to happen. And I would have to project that within a year to two, we would have that information.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, Supervisor Robinson,
Go ahead.
do we have data on how many miles of trails that we have versus our reliance on routes? And do we have trails broken down into those that are on county-owned facilities, such as our forestry units and our parks, versus on private property? And I think one of the things we were looking at is trying to develop the private trail system similar to the snowmobile trail system, and have we done that in the county?
So currently we have 2 summertime ATV trail systems in our Burma County Forest Unit, and then the Edgar Fenwood Trail, which is on the railroad grade that runs out of Edgar almost to Stratford, ending at the river there. Mileage, we have, let me get that number for you. It's going to be approximately 22 miles that we have. Majority of it is out in the Burma County Forest Unit. Again, echoing with what Lieutenant Knecht said with our map, I update that map on the county parks website as well, so that's duplicated out there for folks to see. There is a link also on there to see the trails that we have. So we don't have a ton of trails compared to routes as opposed to other counties.
Do we have any private easement access trails?
Very few, and that's broken up on the Edgar Fenwood Trail for different parcels that we have to cross through. And we have those on a contract with the club and then the current landowner. And just to differentiate between summer ATV trails and the winter ATV or the snowmobile trail system, our snowmobile trail system is, again, based off a yearly verbal contract with the clubs that states, they've talked with the landowner, they have been given permissions, they get all the requirements from the landowner when they need to get their signs off, but that's something that the clubs manage. Every single bit of our snowmobile trail system is pretty much on private property that we are given permission to operate on. Yes, we do have those clubs that utilize some of the Edgar Fenwood Trail and the Burma County Forest Unit trails, but that's a small number compared to the rest of our trail system. So we're very lucky in that regard that we can operate on private property in the wintertime.
All right, does anybody else on the committee have any comments or questions? Hearing none, I think some of the good points that were brought up today. I thank everybody for joining in the conversation. The items in terms of clearing up the ordinance, that makes sense. That's something that we should be working on and creating that clarity on that. A number of things brought up in terms of the cost, I think, is one big thing that we need to be considerate of moving forward if we are to change around our route system. Adding in, especially with the prices as was discussed, that's a pretty large burden that we'd have to look at how we were able to recoup that cost, or if there's groups out there that are willing to donate that. And looking at the maps, the less than 580 T map is interesting, and I think that might be a discussion point for the future. But I think that, as was discussed today, I think there's a number of things that we need to take a more patient conquest on in terms of being eager to change our ordinance around. And I think I'm generally of that mindset as well. Sometime in the future, once we have more data, we're better able to look at that and understand that for what that means for our county. Obviously, there's a number of different things going on within our county when you go from the east to the west side and then within the more metro area. I think those are kind of different things. And I think we kind of take advantage of that with the way that our system is currently and that we're looking at the individual roads. Does anybody else have any thoughts on this, or anybody wishing to make a motion?
Mr. Chair, Supervisor Christensen, are we supposed to be acting on this today? Is there any, just for discussion?
We could act on the changes that were proposed in the ordinance that were sent to you, the three different places that we talked about. Again, the addition to the ordinances with the specifying the difference between the trails and the routes and clarifying that speed limit would be a prudent thing to do today.
Okay, I guess I'd make a motion to approve what the park department wants for the clarification on the ordinance. Is that?
And just to be clear, this would be something that we would recommend approval to the county board. Is that correct?
Corp Counsel's nodding his head yes.
Okay.
Michael's here, so he can comment on it.
So is the motion to recommend approval of those changes, Supervisor Christensen?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Chair, we also have a comment from Sheriff's Department also, yep.
Okay. Was it Supervisor Seiler that seconded?
Yes.
All right. We have a motion and a second. We have a comment from the Sheriff's Department. Go ahead.
Yes. Again, this is Ted Kinnick. I just want to stress the importance of the consistency between the speed limit on the routes and the trails to make sure that we keep everything at 35 miles an hour rather than having one at 30 and one at 35. It would be consistent with the state and then with our ordinance adopting that. Am I correct? Just want to make sure. I'm going to hand the mic over.
Yes, that is the same. As noted on there, we are going to leave the wording, whichever is less. Some of these trails, obviously are, like we said, 35 miles per hour or less unless posted. That's something we would also like to stress on there as far as the safety factors for trails.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Kurt Gibbs here. One of the things that it strikes me that's interesting, and I know we don't have the statistics, but if we could, Ted, as you can, and as the statistics become available, if we could, map out the number of ATV accidents that are occurring on county highways where vehicle counts are below 500, above 500 but below 750. I think that would be an interesting statistic to be able to understand as we look at this potentially in the future. But I know we don't have that data now, but if that data could be broken down in traffic count areas, that would be helpful, I think, to the committee.
Thank you, Chair Gibbs. Anybody else wishing to make?
Supervisor Dickinson, Mr.
Go
Chair.
ahead, Supervisor
I'm
Dickinson.
just trying to clarify what we're voting on. So is this maintaining a single speed unless posted on routes and trails? And is it also changing the age from 12 to 15? Is that being included, or I'm just not clear what we're voting on?
Could we have the screen shared again that has the specifics on the recommended changes, please?
We're bringing it up right now.
Thank you.
Scroll back up.
While that's coming up, I have a request, Mr. Chair, that on these
Go ahead,
issues,
Supervisor.
I know we've got emails that come in, but if they're pertinent to the policy discussions that we're having, I would request that in the future that they be incorporated and added to the packet so that we've got all that information in one place.
In there.
Not the,
I couldn't agree more.
Pardon? Oh, it's not in the packet?
is it in the packet?
I didn't see it.
It's,
Yes.
there's the maps in the packet.
One of the maps is just the explanation of the maps are.
We're just working on bringing it right back up. So we have it brought back up. Apologize, we thought this was in the packet. And so what we have here is for the routes. We're just saying for the routes, this one is to specify, because before it said or trail, so we're just saying operator for the routes, which basically would be your roadways. And then we have a whole separate category in the blue that's talking about the operating requirements for the trails. So we broke those two apart where it was not in there before. And then again, with the green here is talking about the speeds should not, they should observe the 30 miles an hour on the roadway or whatever is less, and then 35s on the trails or whatever is less. So I believe the request was to have it at 35 unless otherwise posted. So if you would like, what we could do is we could send this out and put it back on the agenda for next month so you have time to review it if that is the committee's wishes.
That would be my preference if the motion and second are okay with that.
Yes.
Again,
So
apologies.
the motion to move this forward has been pulled back.
Yes, I will withdraw my
Staff
motion.
Okay, so the motion has been withdrawn with staff direction to provide this in the packet for the July infrastructure meeting. Does anybody else have any questions, comments, or further motions on anything else that's been discussed today?
Yeah, Supervisor Dickinson, I did just want to mention, I haven't heard anything about this, but we have a road safety plan that we've been working on with the edgeline rumble strips and such. And I don't know if there was any consideration for ATVs, UTVs, using the side of the road on these routes, if that was going to be any issue with the ATV, UTV folks. I don't know where they drive. I don't have one, so I don't know if people are driving in the actual lane or if they're driving on the shoulder. But I did just want to bring that up. And then and then I was just going to make one other comment, and that's just in general. I'm for consistency. I'm also for freedom of movement. As I just mentioned, not being one to have an ATV or UTV. I was not initially years ago really in favor of some of this, but having so many people speak out about it, and so many people in the towns out here in the rural area enjoying that movement, I certainly am in support of opening up some of these restrictions in these rural areas specifically to allow people to get around. And I appreciate all the ATV and UTV folks who have come to speak. Thanks.
Thank you. Can anybody on staff comment on the rumble strips and any other associated issues with that, with ATVs, UTV use?
We did not take a look at the ATV, UTV in the safety plan that was brought up, and we decided not to take a look at it this time. The ATV, UTVs operate in the roadway, so the rumble strips would not affect them. They operate on the blacktop.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Supervisor Seiler with the question.
Go ahead.
Again, the word consistency, I think, is really critical, whether it be for the riders and citizens in the different towns, and also law enforcement, because signage is so different everywhere. But regarding to some of the proposed changes, where one is recommending 30 miles per hour on a certain trail and 35 on the other, I guess if we still have Lieutenant Kneck in the room, could he comment on that? Because reading it, it seems to make sense to have those two differences, but now there's no consistency. So is Lieutenant Kneck still with us?
I am.
What are your thoughts on that? Because,
Yeah, I mean, I get your concern. I think the biggest thing is the consistency, staying from one to the next, staying close to what the state statute provides. That way there's less confusion for the people that are partaking in riding. Did I answer your question?
yeah, well, I'm still, and I don't have that verbiage up in front of me, but it looks like in one area to be at 35 may not be safe. So, but in another area, 35 seems to be what's requested by the groups. So I see a bit of a challenge there in trying to honor both safety and what the wishes are for the riders on most of the routes. So
correct. The one
I'm
thing
looking
about
for a
the
little insight on
35,
that.
yeah, the one thing about the 35 mile per hour is it can be adjusted. It's just saying that this is the standard speed. This is what we're going to recommend. And then unless it's otherwise posted, if we have an area that it needs to be slower, then we lower that speed limit. We put an appropriate sign up.
Okay, so this verbiage would allow for that flexibility that you just referred to?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I hate to say this, but in regards to the community maps, with the one chair that asked me a question before, I have an advanced way to get into the community maps that the public doesn't. And I look that data up. I can look it up by township. I can look it up by municipality. I basically ruled out, I selected Mosinee, Rib Mountain, Schofield, Weston, and Wausau, and basically came up with there's 597 crashes in those municipalities. So basically it takes us down to 1805 in a year, and 114 injury crashes in those municipalities with those searches, which subtracting from 512, I mean, you kind of get where I'm coming from here. It's going to be right around that 400 range. So 398 if you want exact. But I think I just wanted to make sure I throw it out there. If you guys ever need any of that information, I'll be more than happy to help and provide it for you. It's right here. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Do we have anything else on this item?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Maybe to Mr. Christensen here, because I know you're a writer. Is that the speed people go with these UTVs nowadays? I'm not familiar. I thought maybe you would be. What are they? What's the real in the real world?
35 is pretty much it. No, you go over faster than that. No, not really. Judy, what do you think?
I recommend it's 35 unless the speed limit's posted lower.
But no, I don't
I'm
think people,
sorry.
there's a few people maybe go over, but not many.
All right, anything further? All right, well, we'll look forward to those ordinance changes at the next meeting, and we'll revisit this discussion at some point in the future once we have more data. Hopefully that's, I would hope sometime this winter that we can have another conversation in terms of our county system. Moving on, moving actually backwards to item 4A, Marathon County Highway Department 2022 capital improvement request. Go ahead, Commissioner Griesbach.
Thank you, Chair. This year, we only have one CIP request form. It's on County Trunk Highway E, 0.77 miles north of County Trunk Highway P on an unnamed tributary over the Big Old Plain River. This is a structure that is over 70 years old. It is less than 20 feet long, so it was never on the bridge program. As you can see from the pictures, that the structure has exceeded its life. The cords are becoming exposed. The abutments and the deck have large section loss in them. It's time to be replaced. What we're looking at doing is replacing this structure with a large box culvert. We're looking at approximately $225,000 for this. We did put in hopefully a little bit extra just because the cost is going up substantially every year, but we're looking at a $225,000 replacement. We feel that we can do this one with a box culvert with the hydraulics that we have out there. By doing it with a box culvert, we can move this up from being a 10-week project down to probably about a 2-week project. So we're requesting that the CIP request for the box culvert on County Trunk Highway E be moved forward to the CIP committee. And then also, I'll just continue and come back to it. We do have some possible joint projects coming up, and Brian Greff is from Central Wisconsin Airport. That's also on our CIP request as some possible future projects. That we may have a project that we may need to do with our Mosinee facility at the end of the runway off of 153. So, Brian, do you want to bring the folks up to speed on that?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Griesbach. So this is just an awareness conversation right now. Through our runway decoupling project that is planned for next year at the soonest, potentially the following year. There's a protected area off the end of the runway called the Runway Protection Zone, the RPZ. With that decoupling project, the county buildings across Oak Road are in that RPZ, and per federal regulation, that should be clear. Now, the committee should know that it is lower than grade. It's across the highway. There's some power lines in the way, but regardless, the structures would be an issue to that clear RPZ. So that may present the county, the airport, with an opportunity to move that. And then I do say opportunity because there could be potentially federal FAA dollars to clear that RPZ. The potential lies in moving those buildings somewhere else, probably on airport property that would not be in the approach area or departure area. Certainly there would have to be county funds involved as well, but a good opportunity to, one, clear the RPZ, to get facilities that meet the needs of the county, potentially a little bit better. In talking with Commissioner Griesbach, that facility is potentially a little undersized for the county's needs. But then also look at some sort of a joint facility with the airport where we can combine our resources and we'll see some synergy with a combined building. So that is not certainly a foregone conclusion yet. We're going through a runway length justification with the FAA. We don't know for sure if they will require a clear RPZ, but indication is they will. Both Jim and I wanted this committee, this board, to be aware of that potential. It may come relatively quickly. It may come after the runway construction. So, you may not hear anything for a few years. You may hear something, in a matter of 6 to 8 months. But wanted to make sure that this committee is aware of that potential.
Thank you. Do we have anything else from Commissioner Griesbach on the CIP request? Otherwise, I'll open it up to discussion.
Yeah, I have one other item that is just part of the rolling stock. And again, this is a discussion that we'll have to have with the CIP committee. Again, with everything going on in the world today, the timing is becoming an issue right now. We've been told by our suppliers if we want to buy a truck for the 2022 budget, if we like to be able to get it in the 2022 budget and have it up and running by December 31st of 2022, we will need to order that truck this August, September at the latest. So we're going to be running into some issues with trying to order vehicles prior to the CIP being officially approved by county board, which normally happens in November. So I'm going to have that discussion with the finance director, Chrissy Palmer, and Terry Kaiser running the CIP. But I believe Jamie's probably from the Parks Department in the same boat I am. You cannot get vehicles. Right now we're trying to get some vehicles from our 2021 purchases, and we're shifting things around just because there's nothing available at this time. And again, our suppliers are telling us if we want to have it on the road by December 31st of 2022, we need to have the thing ordered no later than September 1 of 2021.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
So the HR Finance and Property Committee is going to have a discussion on the role of the Capital Improvement Committee next week at its meeting. I think in light of this discussion, we may want to include that discussion specific to rolling stock and the need to order it. So if you could be available for our meeting next week to enlighten us a little bit more, and Lance will need to make sure that we capture that for the agenda. But I think there's been a concern that the CIP committee doesn't really have we need a policy on rolling stock, our IT and other things, and the current process isn't serving us well, and it's not giving us that guidance on the future. And I think we need to begin to potentially look at a multi-year capital improvement plan, which we sort of adopt, but we don't authorize beyond 1 year, and that might address that. But if you could give some thought to this concept between now and Tuesday, and I would ask Brian, as long as you're on the phone, that you think about it too in the context of the airport operations, and Jamie, from the perspective of your rolling stock, in the sheriff's department as well, if we can get into that multi-tier. But the current system isn't working. We are struggling with how to approach capital projects, and we'll have a discussion next week. But we may need to look, if we've got those hard deadlines to get products delivered next year, we may have to bifurcate our capital improvement process and do an early approval and then a budget approval if indeed that's the situation we're facing. But I do have a follow-up question. So Jim, in light of the general transportation aid implications, how are we looking for our projects for next year in terms of maintenance of effort in order to maximize general transportation aid? You've got the one box culvert project, but I know we've got portions of the K and others, but what are we looking at in terms of projects relative to our 6-year average?
So the projects we have on docket right now are the 2 bridges on County Chunk Highway K. Again, those are 80-20 cost share, so we have the 20% cost share of those bridges. Each one of those bridges I'm projecting are probably going to come in about 1.4, 1.5 million. We also have a bridge on County Chunk Highway A that we'll be replacing next year, so we have quite a few structures. We'll have this one, and in light of last month's finance and county board decision, we have 7 more projects that we are starting to get up and running right now. Another bridge on County Chunk Highway C over the Plover River. We have a intersection improvement on Highway Q, and then we have resurfacing projects we're looking at on County Chunk Highway J, AAA, T. I think I'm missing one. X.
And those are currently in the KIP.
Those are not. Those are what we're possibly looking at for what we're going to do with our federal money that we would be receiving possibly. So the only project I have in the CIP is the other project here. The large bridges, I roll those right into my annual budget under my infrastructure.
Okay. With that, Mr. Chair, I would move that we make a recommendation to, I think the Finance Committee, the HR Finance Property, and the current process calls for the Capital Improvement Committee to approve these projects.
All right, we have a motion from Robinson. Do we have a second?
Second, Supervisor Dickinson.
Second by Dickinson. Do we have any further questions, comments on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed, say nay. All right, that recommendation will move forward. We have item 4B, City County IT 2022 Capital Improvement Request. Go ahead, Mr. Klein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is in your packet. There's a summary page at the beginning. Really the largest and most important comment is to talk about the replacing our financial systems and our human resource system. That project was started last year. It has some partial funding that it received last year. It was the highest priority project when we went in finished budget at the end for 2021. I talked to what we've been doing is we've moved what money we could from closing out other projects into that account. It's we have a couple of $100,000 in there, but the project we haven't signed a contract yet, so the current estimate is not complete. But it's in the neighborhood of $3.8 to $4 million. A part of that would be paid for by the city, probably about $1 million approximately. The county share is somewhere around $3 million, and so we will need to have continue to fund that project. Most likely, it'll get spread out. The 2 vendors that we've got it narrowed down to right now are both expecting, once we sign a contract, that it'd be an 18-month implementation schedule, and payments would be tied to deliverables. So I would expect that we'll make some payments in 2021, 2022, and into 2023. And that is your first submission on the CIP project. And then we have a lot of switches, which are these pieces of equipment that sit in closets, and all of the wires from phones and computers in the area of it go to those closets. We have quite a few of those that are actually going to be at end of support from Cisco. A big chunk of them are in the courthouse here, and those are on the list here for replacing replacing the 4506 closet switches. They add up a lot, so there's pretty expensive. What we would anticipate doing with the county's replacement schedule for that is we're going to replace $70,000 worth of them this year, $70,000 next year, and $70,000 in 2023. So you see that on your request list. And then we have a fair amount of equipment, a fair amount of data and resources out in the cloud, but we also still have over 200 servers that we host in our virtual environments. And that environment is at end of life and needs to be replaced. It's also out of capacity. And so we're anticipating doing what we call a data center refresh that we'd be doing next year. Just to note, because this always comes up, our network manager did some pretty extensive research on comparing those workloads and storage capacity on Azure and Microsoft's Azure project and Amazon's AWS storage solutions, and it's a significantly more expensive solution to move any more of those servers out there. But as we buy applications such as the ERP system, most of those will be cloud-based. So over the course of the next couple of years, as systems get replaced, I would expect our needs for hosting virtual servers will continue to drop, but it will take a number of years. So that's on there as the data center refresh. That would be split between us, the city, the county, the county, the city, and North Central Healthcare would all be funding that project. And then the third item is our internet firewalls. You may recall me talking about this back at the beginning of COVID. When COVID hit and we shipped as many people home as possible, where that was really significant with social services, health department, finance, some of our staff in IT. We had a number, we sent as many people home as we could. We, at the time, scraped together about 100 laptops to get people out at home as quickly as possible. And also as part of that, we needed to significantly increase our firewall capacity, which we did that rapidly with what we had available and what we could get quickly. But we're at capacity on that now, and so we need to replace our internet firewalls as well. I have talked to Administrator Leonard about the potential for that to be funded out of American Recovery, the ARPA funds. I think it qualifies, but that won't be decided until we go through the selection process and what we're going to spend the ARPA money on. But Lance and I talked about this again a few days ago. I'm hopeful that we'll fund the internet firewalls out of that account. But if it's not funded out of that account, we potentially need to fund it out of CIP account. Our internet service right now is our primary service. We have a primary and a secondary. Our primary service is WISCnet, which is a consortium of government and nonprofit education in Wisconsin and medical. They, when we put in the Wausau Community Area Network in 2007, I think it was. That doesn't sound right. 2011. They made a new connection for us in Rib Mountain at the State Patrol building. They had fiber between UWGB and UW Eau Claire at the time. So they made a new connection for us in the State Patrol, and they have a 10 gig connection that's lit up there. But we are only currently able to run up to about 600 megabits on that, and replacing these two firewalls would allow us to go up to over 3 gigabits connection on that. So that's, hang on one second, let's clear that message. And then the last thing is our core switch upgrades. Core switches are the stuff that talks to those firewalls. And those are also near an end of life. They are scheduled for end of life. I think a pair, and I think they're in 2024. They're at end of life. And then we have 4 recurring accounts that we ask that we get funded with. They basically replace PCs, small network equipment like access points. Like for example, in this room, there's 2 access points. And then we have a lot of cameras. We have over 525 fixed cameras between the city and the county in all of our facilities. You can imagine the jail has a lot of cameras. Those fail on a regular basis, so we usually set aside about $40,000 to replace cameras when they die, and the switches that the cameras talk to, because all of our new cameras are digital. And then the last thing is just keeping up with phone system, minor phone system upgrade changes. You have that in there. You have the detail as well in the packet, and I would ask if there's any questions you have.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Klein?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Robinson, go ahead.
So what our long-term vision relative to cloud versus servers is what? Because in looking at some of the justification, it looked like the cloud-based solutions were much more expensive. Is that the case? Or where are we heading from a policy perspective?
Well, whether it's policy or not, the reality is we go to buy applications. There's less and less applications are even available to be sold, to be installed, what they call on-premise. So I don't expect us to be buying many more on-premise solutions. However, we do store a lot of files, and what we call our O drives here and our M drives. And those are documents that get accessed a lot, and that's the interesting difference in putting stuff in the cloud. It's cost-effective to put stuff in the cloud that you don't access very often. It's not very cost-effective if you have stuff that needs a lot of access, frequent access. And that's where it becomes less cost effective. So again, even without policy, the reality is we're just not going to buy a lot more on-premise solutions because they're just not available. In fact, the ERP system, one of the vendors that we narrowed it down to 2 I mentioned last month, and one of those 2 vendors decided last week to remove the option for us to buy it as on-prem. And so we're really only looking at 2 different cloud solutions.
So does that subject us to if we own it, we have the ability to support it even beyond the support of the company at our own risk. But when you're cloud-based, are we really tied into them? So if they decide they're no longer going to support a system, we lose access to it?
That's accurate. Most of the licenses, historically, when we bought on-prem software, we would license it for in perpetuity. So if you decided to stop paying maintenance on it because you were not using it very much, you could just keep using it, and you would be licensed to do that. But when you buy cloud solutions, you're really moving from a capital purchase to an annual operating cost. And where we see a huge hit on that, and Lance was pretty directly involved in this last year when we funded the IT budget for the county, was we are decommissioning our mail environment and moving to Office 365. We're in the middle of that project. I wouldn't say we're in the middle of it. We're about a quarter to a third of the way into it. And that is basically Microsoft saying, we're going to stop letting you put Exchange servers on your on-premise environment. And the only way that's going to be cost effective to do is to put it in the mail, to put it in the environment, in their cloud environment. And so, for example, on Office stuff, we used to buy Office licenses when we bought PCs. We would spend $280 for an Office license. So they basically they just keep moving that market out of the way through typically through costing. And so now really the only cost-effective way to license Office is to do it as a cloud solution. And the impact on the county, I think, was, do you remember? I think it was $110,000. That was just operating in budget. So where we used to fund that stuff with capital, even this year there was 100. I think it was 110. Maybe I'm thinking of. It was either 110 or 140. It was a bunch that we already hit in 2021. So that's an example of, as we move from capital to operating budget, it's kind of all across the boards we're having that impact.
So the question becomes one of, as we look at our capital side, we occasionally look at the borrowing to get it above the line for our levy limits. What sort of ramifications does this have upon our ability to sustain those operations? If we move something from capital to O&M, and we only have a net new construction gain of, let's say, $1 million, and we're moving capital, and we all of a sudden move $600,000-$700,000 into O&M that were at one time capital. Have we done any forecasting about what that might mean to us, as we deal with our legislators and try to make them aware of our financial situation?
I'll defer to Lance for that one.
That's a very good question. In terms of forecasting, I mean, that's essentially what you referred to before, that our current CIP process really isn't serving us well. We do have a 5-year CIP that is prepared and it's available online, but really the board is not directly engaged in understanding what that looks like and understanding the ramifications of those. Those are market changes that we have no control over. That's just the way it's going. And we're going to need to find those answers. And right now, the process isn't serving us well in that regard. That said, the CIP work group that has been meeting up until recently, I think we've made some good progress. And in our kind of investigation stage, we have found that, at least it appears on paper, that some counties have put those license expenditures into their CIP. I don't know how, and we have to look into that and truly see. I mean, ultimately the threshold question is, to your point, can we borrow for this or not? And we need to drill into that. But like Jerry said, whether we want to or not, the environments are moving that way, and we're going to be moving to more cloud-based solutions. And you know, there's security ramifications that go with that too. Right now, we have a lot of internal security processes that maintain those on-premise servers, and you don't need to wait very long before the news cycles, before you see a local government or a state government being subjected to ransomware, some form of attack. The good news is that, and I shared this just an article earlier or last month with Jerry, there are federal and state programs that are working to really try to align the market forces of those like AWS and Azure, these cloud solutions with the needs of government procurement, because that's also sometimes you run into issues with procurement. I know when Jerry's working with departments to procure software, we run into issues with procurement. What are the contracts that those software vendors are looking for us? What are those standard contract terms that they're asking us to enter into? And the reality is we're gonna have to find an answer, whether that's a legislative solution or it's a financial accounting solution. Quite honestly, I don't know yet, but we have found a couple of counties that, at least on paper, it appears that they've just moved those costs. They've left them, I guess I'd say, on the capital borrowing side.
Right. And I would point out that even if we moved everything to the cloud and we had no physical server storage here, we would still be doing most of this stuff. We still have to put access points in place. We still have to have firewalls, core firewalls, switches, closet switches. There's still a pretty big investment. Even if you had every single thing in the cloud, you'd still have a whole bunch of other equipment you'd still have to keep replacing. And with respect to access points, that's a constant. Pretty much, we're always just adding access points. I think we will be for years. And then by the time we're done adding them, we're probably already on our third generation of access points. But the density of them continues to go. So for example, in this building, we didn't even used to have wireless access in all the courtrooms. We first just put it down all the hallways, and now it's got to be in all the courtrooms. And then we did that. And then after that, it was, well, you need them in all the conference rooms and all of the back office areas for the courts as well. And so we just keep putting in access points. And then all of those access points, they cost about, like that one right there is about $700, but it talks to a controller that's more like $200,000 once you put a couple of controllers together. So all of that equipment we'll continue to have to buy.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we recommend approval of the CCIT capital improvement request and forward them through the approval process.
Thank you, Supervisor Robinson. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Supervisor Seiler seconds.
We have a motion and a second to move the CCIT 2022 capital improvement request forward. Any other comments, questions from the committee?
Yes, Mr. Chair, if I may, it's been mentioned a few times that, hopefully some of this might be funded by CIP. And if I may ask Administrator Leonard, do we have any idea at this time what type of funding might be available for that CIP funding mechanism?
I can get that and see if Christy has the year-end, has that figure. I don't have it with me today, but I can find that for you,
Okay.
Supervisor.
All right, $64,000 question. Thank you.
I hope it's a lot more than $64,000.
He does have $13 million in his checking account right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very good. I guess just generally speaking, as part of this conversation and some of these discussions going back to even the highway department capital improvement, I am starting to grow more and more concerned about budgets in general at every level. And it seems to be the decreasing value what a dollar will be able to get you in a lot of cases. I think that's something that as we move forward with the rest of the year and into the future, that's something we're going to have to address and may lead to some difficult decisions. So we do have a motion and a second on the capital improvement request for CCIT. Last call for questions, comments. Hearing none, all those in favor of moving the request forward signify by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed, say nay. All right, that will move forward. We are on to item 4C, Marathon County Highway Succession Plan and Expanded Job Request. Commissioner Griesbach.
Thank you, Chair. Part of my 2021 work plan from Administrator Leonard was to work on a highway department succession plan. So I don't know if Administrator Leonard's looking at my hairline going back and figuring I'm leaving soon, but once we brought it up, some things became very evident to us. Is one thing is looking just at the age of my management staff at the highway department. 42% of the management staff at the department is the age of 55 or older and can be eligible for retirement within the next few years. So we start looking at some of our key members, and I know already in 2022 I'm going to lose 2 key members of my staff. The other thing with this succession plan is we looked at what we have for bench strengths. And once we start looking at what we had for bench strength, some other things became very clear to us is in our accounting department, Mary Rosenberg is our accountant, and our accounting process is very complex, working with not Marathon County, but with the Department of Transportation and the federal highway regulations. It's a very complex process. Our bench strength on a rating of 1 to 10, our accounting department is a 1. We have really no backup plan in that position. So we start looking at where we're going to go in the future. Again, as far as our retirement, I'm going to be losing one of my administrative staff here next June. My administrative coordinator will be retiring, and at that point gives us an opportunity to do some shuffling around and to move some people around. So one of the expanded positions that we're going to take a look at is to move Kendra into that position, hopefully in next summer, if things go according to plan, which would open up a position, her position, which we would move down from what's Kendra's a 0.8 to a 0.6 position for time-wise, and then create a new position for the accountant technician to be a backup to Mary, and that would also be a 0.6 position. So that would be a new position that we're requesting is the accounting, my notes here, the proper title to it is the accountant. The accountant specialist at 0.6. You will notice on the form that was sent, the position actually said 0.8. I noticed that this morning when I was going over my notes, it actually should be, we're requesting a 0.6 position for that, not a 0.8. Again, so we would be creating a accounting specialist at 0.6. The other position that we're going to take a look at is probably doing some we work in our office and looking at moving Kevin Lang from his current position of maintenance manager to deputy director for the highway department. Kevin is kind of right now overseeing a lot of the field work. We would give him that official title, so he would oversee all the field operations, and I would take over all the administrative duties, plus helping Kevin on the field work side. So our request is good to for our final classification, which if you want to switch to in the beginning here, is to add administrator, move the administrative coordinator from a 0.1 to a 0.8, add a administrative, the accountant at a 0.6, and move the maintenance manager to a highway director, deputy director. With all those changes being made, let's go back here. I just need to bring up the right document for you. So our final financial impact to the department, by moving the administrative coordinator from a 0.1 to a 0.8, we would see a savings of 19,000. Administrative specialist from 0.8 to 0.6, that would be the new position opened up by Kendra, 29, because that 0.6 would not have any benefits. Move the maintenance manager to the deputy highway director with an increase, and create a new accounting specialist at a 0.6. Again, there would be no benefits with that position. So overall, with adding a position, we'd actually be saving the department about $10,488. So my request today is to move on the expanded positions again for the new accounting specialist and the deputy highway director, and then we would delete the maintenance manager director position from our department.
In terms of process, and this might be a question for Jim as well as Lance, what is the process on this? Does this go, what would this be moved on to? What is the ask of the committee today?
The ask of the committee would be to move those forward to the HR committee. The one position that we'd be looking at doing in 2021 yet would be creating the accounting specialist. We would like to create that as soon as possible, because if we do go to the new financial software, with Mary being the sole person down there, training is going to be a key timing issue. If we would do this in January, when most positions are created, we have the issue of January, February, March, April. Mary probably works, I would guess, between home and what she does at the office, probably in the area of 60 to 65 hours, 60 hours a week. She'll have no time for training. And in that process, we're going to be in the middle of creating all of our new job costing program that we're going to be doing for finance. So we'd like to bring a person up to speed here in 2021 yet for that position.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the committee members?
Mr. Chair?
Supervisor Dickinson.
Let's go Supervisor Dickinson and then Supervisor Robinson.
My only concern with making those non-benefit positions is those tend to be difficult to hire. Jim, or does anybody have any, from the county perspective, is that a hiring issue to have these non-benefit positions, to get people to apply for those and to hire those positions?
This is Administrator Leonard. Supervisor Dickinson, that's a really good question, and it's been my experience that it's unique to the individual that you're recruiting. There are some individuals that's exactly what they're looking for. And then to your point, there are other individuals that you hire for a 0.6 and they're always looking for the 1.0 FTE position. And that is something I think we need to be mindful of moving forward. And just a little bit expounding on your question and the reason why I put this on Jim's work plan. It's been my assessment, one of my assessments thus far, the ways that we've operated in terms of, we've talked about this with capital improvement, but also with just personnel in general. We're slow to add a position, and we're really slow to take positions away. We don't change the way that we're organized very quickly, and I think we're really going to need to do that moving forward. And as Jim alluded to with the new financial software, the new ERP system, there's going to be a lot of things that need to move. And this committee also has talked about, the kind of this vision, this what I'll call midterm vision of moving to a shared facility with other departments, Parks, Recreation, Forestry, Conservation, Planning, and Zoning. I think there's a real opportunity when we do that to align some of these resources in terms of, particularly on the financial side, with shared positions. Because right now, like Jim said, he's got a finance person in his department that really knows highway really well, and she used to work in our finance department, so she knows general finance as well across the county. But that's not always the case. We have finance people that really live within departments rather than finance people that understand broad county finance as well. So certainly your point is well taken that, you know, we might find that the .6 position doesn't work. But my thought process in asking Jim to look at this was, let's see what we need right now, and we need to get more comfortable with changing as our needs change. And just in terms of timing, as the question was asked by the chair, for positions that are gonna take effect mid-year, the next step is they are presented to the HR, Finance, and Property Committee, and that is done in the middle of the year twice. First in March, and then positions are also grouped in August. So this would move forward for consideration by the HR, Finance, and Property Committee in August. And then if it's approved there, it would go to the full county board that same month for approval, and then we'd move forward with making that change within this calendar year. And any other positions that were gonna take place through the budget process go through that standard process.
And just to touch on finish that up with those positions, the positions that we were looking at for this year again would be the accounting one, and then also with the training for the new position, I'd also like to move Kevin into his new position in 2021. And just to touch on also with your question of trying to find people, we did find Kendra at those rates, so.
Mr. Chair.
Very good, thank you.
I too share Supervisor Dickinson's concerns over that, and I would encourage HR to take a good look at what the ramifications, and if the savings are all because we're not providing benefits, that's a concern that I have going forward. I understand the need for us to be flexible, but are we meeting the needs of the organization or individuals? And I think we have to be careful that we balance those out. And we'll take a good look at those at HR Finance, but
yeah, I would ask that you take those comments to the HR Finance Chair. I think that would be valuable for their conversation as well.
I'll deliver those myself.
Thank you.
And for that meeting.
Did you have anything else? Sorry to cut you off.
And for that meeting, John, we can have the numbers to evaluate what it would be with benefits and without.
Very good. Does anybody else on the committee have any questions, comments on this item? I hear some stirring. Is anybody wishing to make any further comments? Otherwise, I would take a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we approve the succession plan and expanded job request put forth by the Highway Department Administration and forward that to the HR Finance Property Committee.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion from Robinson, a second by Christensen. Any further questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Anybody opposed signify by saying nay. All right, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for all that work on that. We're on to item 6A, Educational Presentations Committee Discussion. Update on the 2050 Transportation Plan. See, we have Daryl Landau from North Central Regional Planning on the virtual. Take it away, Daryl.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me this morning. So as you know, the county has asked the North Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission for assistance in developing a county-level highway network sustainability plan. The primary purpose or goal of the study is to identify the level of maintenance necessary to sustain a well-maintained, reliable highway system that will ensure safety and mobility for the county's residents and commerce well into the future. So this effort stems from and seeks to implement one of the objectives in the county's current strategic plan, which is to maintain infrastructure to support economic growth. So Commissioner Griesbach has requested that I provide an update today on the project. So I just want to spend a few minutes on a brief overview of what we've been working on, with a more detailed report expected in the next couple of months or so, probably your August meeting. So at this point, we've built a highway segment database upon which to do our analysis, and we are currently working on an application to allow easier tracking and analyzing of maintenance practices across the network. So this would be a byproduct of the study that would facilitate monitoring the performance of maintenance practices and products that are being used and thereby assist with the plan implementation. We're also working on trying to create a classification system for county highways that better reflects the importance of a particular segment within the overall network. The traditional functional classification system of arterials, collectors, etc., does not adequately take into account the contextual setting of the road. So for example, the functional classification only provides one level of separation between, say, a county highway G in the northeast corner of the county with only a few hundred cars per day on it, versus a highway X here in the urban area that's carrying thousands of cars. So this system would need to inform maintenance decisions as well as communicate to the public what the potential service level expectations would be on a particular road. So we're looking at using a range of possible criteria with this classification system, and we're looking at things like population, employment, land use type and density, location of county facilities and services, and even projection of future growth, including the county's future land use from the comprehensive plan, planned location of new county facilities, things like that, and as well as working on a methodology to apply those criteria to place the highway segments into the classes. So we'll use this classification system to apply best management practices for maintenance, which include things like crack filling, seal coating, overlay, et cetera, across the network over a 25-year long-range planning cycle. Or I guess actually more like a 30-year since we're going out to 2050 with it. Anyway, typical asphalt pavement will last about 20 to 25 years with no maintenance. So applying the appropriate maintenance treatments can extend the life cycle out to between 40 and 70 years. So the plan will look at the maintenance and budgeting needs to maximize pavement life cycle and service level. The plan is intended to be flexible and serve as a guide when determining road projects and funding. So basically at this point, that's what we've been or are working on. Other factors I still need to look at addressing include the recent highway safety plan, which has been mentioned a couple of times today, bridges, bicycle pedestrian accommodations, and things like that. So again, I'm hoping to wrap up my work in the next couple of months, including coordination with Commissioner Griesbach and also working with Kevin Lane so that I can make a more detailed report to the committee in August. And that's really all I have for you right now, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Landau. Do we have any questions for him from the committee? Hearing none, thank you for that update. We'll look forward to the project coming forward to us in the future. We're on item 6B, Big Pawtuski Bike Trail. How do you say that?
Pawtuski.
Correct. There you go. Thank you.
I was approached a couple of weeks back by Bill Bram from Iron Bull, and they're putting together a bike trail map around the northwest part of Marathon County. I want you to scroll down here, Kendra. The layout kind of hits Athens, Little Chicago, through that whole area, coming up around, and usually mostly town gravel roads. One thing Bill said, the fastest biking thing growing in popularity, and Jerry can maybe weigh in on this, is getting bikers on gravel roads, and gravel road biking is becoming increasingly more popular. So they want to, they again, mainly on town roads. There's some small sections, however, that they're going to be hitting some county roads. There'd be no cost for the county, but it's just it's a nice trail, I believe. Talks about how the trail is. There's some of the county roads that would be just touching. Again, most of these are just going down until the next side road. Some of the things that it's going to hit, it hits 2 county parks, 5 historical markers, 7 taverns, 5 historical churches, 10 cemeteries, 3 century farms, 5 forgotten towns, 1 historical small sawmill, 2 forests, a maple syrup and a berry farm, 5 restaurants, plus 20 acres, and this is a whole lot more. So they're kind of making it around to help the economic people up in that area. They're hoping people, when they go on their bike, they're going to take the opportunity it starts in Athens and take off from there and hit a few of the facilities, and it's a beautiful trail that they're working on. So it's just more for information's sake that they've approached all of the villages, they've talked to the townships, and they've also talked to the Department of Transportation regarding this. Jerry, do you know much about it?
Thank you. Does anybody on the committee have any questions?
No, he's not.
I would certainly reiterate that gravel cycling is a huge growth area for the industry. Went from road biking to mountain biking, and now the big thing is gravel bikes. Those are super popular. Most of those bikes are $2,000 to $5,000, and people will go long distances to participate in gravel rides. So I would anticipate once he gets this laid out that they'll probably end up with doing some gravel rides. I'm certain Iron Bull will use the route.
Very cool. I appreciate the update on that. Hearing no questions from the committee. We have a question from the committee. Go ahead. Who was that?
Yeah, what's the speed limit on those?
And they do allow training wheels.
Yeah. That's important for some of us out there. Moving on to item 6C, broadband update, Supervisor Robinson.
There's a lot going on with little progress, is the best way for me to describe it. We continue to work with and try to get clarification from LTD and Charter, CCO, relative to the Rural Opportunities Development Fund and the development of their build-outs on the gigabyte service awarded through the Federal Communications System. We're excited with the potential for the American Rescue Plan dollars. I know that Milt Olson, Town Chair from the town of Weston, is aggressively working with other towns to see if they would contribute into the fund to try to expand broadband, and we'll have some discussions going forward. At the last meeting of the HR Finance Property Committee, they are working on an engagement process to engage the community on how to spend or potential priorities for the American Rescue Plan. One of those eligible activities is broadband expansion. Yesterday, the State Public Service Commission released guidelines for an application process using a portion of the state's federal funds for broadband expansion. There's $100 million of grants that will be awarded through the Public Service Commission. Those will be tied into trying to achieve simultaneous 100 megabytes up and down with, if it's not available, they would allow for 100 down and 20 up. But there are lots of exciting things, and they've expanded the broadband eligibility map to include, clarify areas that are now eligible, and a significant portion of the county is there. So we will be working with a number of internet service providers to see if they are interested in looking at the state grant and in other opportunities. We have a meeting tomorrow with Bug Tussle, and we've had discussions with Wittenberg Tell and others, and we're going to be reaching out to the other internet service providers in the near future. We have approximately $178,000 left over in the capital improvement plan for broadband expansion that we could use as a match. We need to determine how we would leverage that, but there's a lot going on. I think it's important that we try to identify our priorities and opportunities for involvement. I know that Wittenberg Tell is looking at the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Reconnect program, which also is looking at serving a portion of the eastern part of the county, and they're looking at build-outs. So we're looking ahead to lots of opportunities and dialogues with the internet service providers. So Lance or Jerry, is there anything you want to add?
I just want to comment the state $100 million that Evers has moved to the PSC grant. That application process opens either yesterday or today, and it's quick. It has to be done by July 27th, so we need to we need to move quickly to encourage people to apply for that increase in Marathon County. We had a really good meeting with Charter, I don't know, a week or two ago. If you remember at the last infrastructure meeting, when John and I gave an update on broadband, we showed an RDOF map where the Rural Development Opportunity Fund money was available, and those grants were won by LTD and Charter. If you recall, that map doesn't have very much on the east side of Highway 39, and so I think that's the next big area that we need to, opportunity area that we need to focus on.
Thank you for the update, Supervisor Robinson and Mr. Klein. Any other questions from the committee on broadband update? Hearing none, thank you for that report once again. We're going to go on to item 6D, updates from CCIT Director. Go ahead, Mr. Klein.
I don't have anything other than I did include an update on all of our projects in the packet. Is there any questions on any of the open projects?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Supervisor Seiler.
Go ahead.
Yes, Jerry, looking through your projects, 220-029, the USDD Safer Network Connection. Can you remind me what the footprint of the Safer District is, what that encompasses? And then I'm curious if this type of technology is available or possible for the rural emergency provider.
So Safer, as if most of you are probably aware, Safer is a combined fire department that was done quite a few years back between the town of Rib Mountain and the village of Weston. And then Safer has contracts also to cover the town of Marathon. I think they have some. I'm trying to remember. They have Croninwater still. I can't remember else. They have some backup ones for some other agencies. Lance, what did you say?
I believe the chair would know if Croninwater has a contract.
Croninwater, I think, is still using Safer, right?
Yeah. Croninwater is using Safer for ambulance service at this time.
All right. So the project that's on the project schedule has to do with expanding access to data for into those fire departments. A couple of years ago, we added an application that goes on their phones. And so volunteer firemen have an app on their phone, and when their agency is called out, their phone pops up and says, "Are you able to respond to this?" But what we're adding right now is network connections into Riverside and Safer, so that they have direct access to this much more higher level of detail that the dispatch center has access to. So we're doing that in Riverside and in Safer, and the main area that what they'll use it then for is that they have iPads that they're putting in their vehicles and taking with them, and then they can dig into more detail about the call. As far as, Sandy, to answer your question, if other fire departments wanted to get involved, they could. There is a cost to this, and we would need to talk about it with them.
Sure. Well, the cost I appreciate is one aspect, but just the capacity, knowing, and again, I am not really sure. I don't know that this is the place to find out exactly how things are with communication in our rural areas, given the challenges we've had in the past. So I have to say I'm not totally up to speed on that. But even if they wanted to, cost aside, is the capacity to do that, does that exist for the outlying districts?
Well, that would get us back to the item right before this. I don't know that all the fire departments actually have good access to high-speed broadband at their agency location. Right now, City of Wausau's fire department is an active user of this interface, and Safer and Riverside are being added. I don't know that I can speak perfectly to this, but I believe that those are the only ones with full-time fire staff. Is that an accurate statement? Is there any other fire departments that have full-time staff? Do you know? Sandy, it probably makes more sense for the full-time agencies, and especially only works for those that have access to high-speed broadband at their station.
Okay, well then we'll get that fixed. Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you. Hearing no other questions, comments on the CCIT Director report, we'll move on to item 6E, Commissioner's report. Go ahead,
I did send out our work schedule that we're working on right now. And right now, we're out paving out on the west side of the county and starting a large box on Monday on Highway P. But a couple other items that happened since it was sent out. Last Monday, myself and 3 or 4 other people from the executive committee from the Wisconsin County Highway Association, we sat down with Mark O'Connor and Dan Barr from WCA to start talking about maybe partnering and working with them at seeing what each group could do for one another and how WCA could help WCHA out. So it's kind of early. That was a first date awkward situation last Monday, but I foresee us down the road doing more stuff with WCA than we had in the past to help us for trainings. Road school is scheduled again for next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. People must be feeling more comfortable. We have 67 out of the 72 counties going to be at road school. Normally in the summer, we have about 35 vendors for the exhibit hall. This year we have 64. So we have a lot of people attending. We're having kind of record numbers for a summer school. On June 15th, our department's going to be holding a full staff meeting to discuss our culture survey results. So we're going to go over those results. And on June 28th, we just had the pre-con yesterday, that the bridges that we had talked about to redeck to help our GTA rolling stock, they're going to be begin working on the 2 bridges on either side of Highway X on June 28th. So those bridges will be starting up.
Thank you for that report. Does anybody have any questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 7, announcements. 7A, future meetings and agenda items. As Jim just mentioned, the road school June 7th through the 9th, 2021, Chula Vista, Wisconsin Dells. We have a request for a speed limit reduction on County Highway NN from Red Wing Road to Greenhouse Road. And our next meeting will be on July 1, 2021. I guess I just want to mention that, just as a reminder, I've mentioned it in the past, please, let's make sure that we have all the items that are going to be talked about in the packet if all possible. It just makes it a lot easier, and then we can move things forward a lot smoother. I was just also thinking about it'd be good to get another update from Brian about the Seaway decoupling project and how that's going. And I get a decent amount of questions just from people interested in, it's kind of a big thing going on in the southern part of the county and drawing some interest. So if we could have that added as well, but do we have anything else? Hearing none, we're up for item 8.
I'll move to adjourn.
We got a motion by Robinson. Is that a second by Christensen? All right. We have a motion by Robinson, a second by Christian. I want to thank everybody. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day, everybody. Stay cool.
I have. I'm a big pizza guy. I'll wait till the meeting ended.